10 years, right?
Right.
I mean, so how would you, oh, okay. So Coach, so we're live now, right? So let's kind of jump into this whole thing. So, guys, Coach Schuman will be on in a couple minutes. He's just finishing up a couple things here. We have a great guest today from the West Coast because like we like to kind of give you guys a perspective and whatnot. Coach Shap, give us a little bit of your background, kind of how you got where you are. Just kind of tell that story a little bit so you can paint the picture for these for our guests.
Yeah, if you want to go way deep into the history, I was a soccer kid.
Go for
it. In the Northwest, and played select soccer. Played in Europe for a summer. I was a big soccer kid. My high school football team needed a kicker. My junior year of high school, so it turned out to be a kicker. By the end of that year, I was a defensive back receiver. Was fast enough to make a difference. And long story short, ended up playing small college football here on the West Coast. Played at Azusa Pacific University, the home of Christian Okoye way back in the day, Kansas City Chiefs, and then transferred to Pacific Lutheran University in Tacoma, Washington. There's a legendary coach there by the name of Frosty Westering. If you Google his name, you'll see that he was one of the all-time winningest college football coaches ever in college football history.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, listen, Coach, you're preaching my world here because I was a Division III college football player over here on the East Coast at Montclair State. Played for a legendary coach. Hey, Dave.
Hey, what's going on? Sorry, guys. I was finishing up our Husky Huddle podcast, and
Coach is a UConn alum, so he's drinking the Kool-Aid, man. They got a couple wins now, so it's big time.
That's good.
Well, I was on with so we had I don't know, you wouldn't know the name, but Maria Conlin was our guest. So she played for Gino Area when they won all those championships and like not the ones in the 90s. She was with Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird. She was with Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird.
That's cool. Well,
so we had her on. It was great. We were talking football, but we got on a tangent, and it's funny because I'm so glad to get you on. Here's where the tangent always goes, and you'll appreciate that because I follow your Twitter, and the post you have. We got on a tangent. Maria just took over a Division III school, but she coaches her daughters in AAU basketball. Obviously, she was a big-time Division I player, and probably played professional for a little bit. But we got to talking about NIL, transfer portal stuff, and it was interesting because we started talking. We were showing off the walk-off touchdown they had and everything like that at the end of the game. And then immediately it ends up morphing to like how the whole world is how it's like a like for UConn it's like a catch-22 because basketball rules the roost, but like you get in this strange world where Alabama their basketball programs have improved tremendously. I'm using them as an example, but they've improved tremendously because all the money they make from football, whereas UConn is still we're still a group of, I don't know what you call it now, group of 5 school.
Right.
And in the long run, it may affect basketball, even though we have probably the 2 best basketball coaches, men's and women in the country. Down the line, it could affect it. And we're talking about how like craziness with no regulation and
it's a mess.
It's a mess. And we were talking about like she just took over a Division III program. And she literally today was like her first day starting on at it. And I was like, this division, I wondered, is there NIL? She's like, believe it or not, there are some places that there is some stuff.
They're like trickling
the same as Division I.
Yeah.
I said, that's wild. That's
never ending conversation for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a walk, but it's so great to have you on because, your success as a coach and what you've done and your perspective and being on the West Coast. Is actually probably somewhat similar to being on the East Coast as far as from an analyst standpoint as some of the things that go on in sports. But it's great to have you on, and I'm looking forward to talking with you. I'm sorry, Derek. I don't want to interrupt where you were.
No, you're good, Coach. Coach was just giving us a little bit of his background in terms of how he kind of got to where he was. So go ahead, Coach. You had just got to
pick it up at PLU. Yeah, Frosty Westering, one of the all-time winningest college football coaches ever. And there's a whole philosophy thing that I can share later about what I learned between my first college experience at Azusa and my second college experience at Pacific Lutheran. But long story short, I was a late bloomer in football, kicker to collegiate football player, played receiver. And when I graduated, I was like, man, I am not done with this game. I just started to fall in love with it and really felt like I could give back to the community by actually either being a youth pastor or being a coach. And so I chose coach because I think you get 60, 70, 80 kids every year, and you get to kind of teach them how to be good men. And been doing that at the same school for 31 years. I've not coached anywhere else.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, started out as a volunteer, 3 years later, defensive coordinator, and then head coach for now. I think this is my 29th year as head coach, something like that. And so that's the run. And I was sharing with you, Derek, earlier, we've had 0-10 seasons and 10-0 seasons. Yeah. My very first season, we went 1-9 with a bunch of sophomores, and 2 years later went 9-1 as they were seniors and ranked number 1 in the state. So just I've been through it all, both young and old. I'm 52 years old and plan to be there for much longer, a lot more longer.
It's incredible.
Through your years of coaching, what are some of the things that you've really seen change, in coaching over the last, especially the last 10 years or so? What are some of the things that you've seen really change?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is technology. I jokingly say we used to make copies on VHS tapes and drop them off like drug deals behind the 7-Eleven or the drugstore because you're trying to meet up with the next coach from 2 towns down. I mean, and I play mid-sized ball here, so we're traveling 1-2 hours to play our opponents. So I think technology from VHS to DVD to Huddle, I've seen it all, and just the progression of technology has been, I think, a great asset to both coaches and players. And now we got sideline cameras and instant replay on the sidelines, all the things that we didn't have back in the day. So I think that has been a huge benefit. Just teaching, coaching, and being able to get the information into the players' hands. I'll tell you what hasn't changed, I think, is actually the young men themselves. Yes, again, technology, and it's a modern era, but I think there's young men out there that want to work hard, want to play hard. They need something physical to be a part of nowadays, more than even back in the day. Back in the day, they could go out and play when they were younger, ride their bikes and go get dirty and muddy. And now, at least here in a lot of our inner city spaces, that's just not the way these kids grow up. So I think football gives that platform for kids to do that. I think what has changed, and you alluded to it, is just I kind of call it what would I name it? Just kind of the nature of the game has turned more into showcase and look at me and money and all these kind of high flying things that I think everyone's pursuing because they all want to get to the next level. And I think in some ways it's kind of tainted the high school game a little bit. These kids need to be reminded they're 16 years old. They're not 20. They're not playing college ball yet. I think some coaches forget that as well, that we have a job to do at the high school level to teach fundamentals, to teach sportsmanship, to teach attitude, help these boys become men. And then as they're men, they can make other decisions. So I think that's one thing that's kind of changed in the environment over the years.
That's a great perspective, Coach. Absolutely. And you kind of see that too. And I love the fact that you referenced, I think as coaches, we need to understand that they are 16-year-old boys still, and they're in that developmental stage, and they're still trying to figure out who they are. And ultimately they're not college football players yet. Yes, maybe that's something that they look to long for in the long run, but we need to treat them kind of like where their feet are right now. And I think a lot of coaches sometimes lose sight of that. And even with the expectation of certain things. I mean, how many times do you see guys go to clinics and they come back and it's, hey, we can do this. And it's like, you can't do that. Right. No. I mean, I was watching the Giants over here on the East Coast yesterday, and a guy makes a tremendous play in overtime, hurtling over the guy, right, and blocks. How many high school coaches this week are going back and they're going to have now guys hurdling the center to try and make that play? And we all know it takes a freak athlete to do that, and most high school kids are not going to be able to do that. So I think that's a huge piece to this puzzle that a lot of coaches don't really see, and because there's just so lasered in on, okay, we have to do this or we have to do that and we have to do this, and I think it's part of it. That's
true, Derek. I think also too, back to the question, I think what's changed is the knowledge, like the amount of X's and O's that we know now at the high school level is just, it's insane. And I think most coaches go way overboard on the things they want to, their playbook is too deep, it's too wide. Again, they'll keep it simple. And I see the successful programs here, at least in the state of Washington, really the Northwest, Oregon, Idaho included. It's the coaches that have been there a while that are running the same darn thing. And it's simple. It's Jimmy's and Joe's, it's athletes, it's weight room. And you're not going to beat, in most cases, you're not going to beat your opponent because you out X's and O'd them all day long. You got to have good scheme. You got to be able to adjust. All those things matter, but the depth of your playbook really does not matter.
Yeah, I do think that's the thing that we forget, that it's there's a big Jimmy's and Joe's element to it all. And sometimes, now obviously you could build and improve everybody, but you have to recognize that first, before you begin to construct anything, is to figure out, know what your kids actually can do, because what they can or can't do dictates a lot to what you're going to be able to do. And as kids improve, or as the level of the players you have improves, you're going to be able to do things that are better or more dynamic than you would if they were not at that level. And I think that's a big thing. That's an important thing for players, coaches really to understand.
Yeah.
And
I'll just kind of chime in, because I think one thing that we forget and miss, and it's really difficult to measure, is the measure the heart and the mind of a player.
Right.
I was sharing with Derek, our season started out this year, we were 0-3, haven't been that way in a long time. Multiple injuries at the varsity level, and I had to play a junior varsity left guard. I had to put my backup running back to right guard, and we're piecing this thing together. And to see these kids and their hearts, we just had a big win last Friday. They outweighed us almost 70 pounds on the offensive line, and we were outgunned. They're a larger division school. They were 3-1. We were 1-3, and we beat them 40-37 in a last-minute play. And we had no business being in that game. But what you can't measure, if you can speak into their lives, the heart, the belief, the mindset. And my smaller guys absolutely went out there and chopped wood. It was amazing to see. So, and that's hard as coaches. I think that's where, as you're saying, we should invest in that first. No matter what, that's our job, and then it's going to pay off on Friday nights. Those kids played so big and so strong, even though they weren't bigger or stronger than the opponent.
There's no doubt about it. How about parents? What have you seen from that standpoint? Is there anything that's weighed into it from that standpoint that has changed over the years? Their involvement, that kind of a thing.
Okay, I get criticized for this often, especially on social media. I don't know where I came up with it. It might have been a great idea 30 years ago, but I have told my parents for 30 years, I will not talk to you during the season about X's and O's or your Jimmy or your Joe. It's not going to happen. I will talk to you all day long after the season or before the season. So I have multiple meetings with parents, with players, postseason, preseason. What's their job? What's their role? What's their opportunity? So I snicker at that, because for 30 years, I've heard crickets. I get no comments, because I'm not going to pick up the phone. I'm not going to reply to the email during season about my play calling and or your son's playing time or his role. It's your son's job to come to their position coach or to me to talk about that. We'll give them a fair and honest answer. And so honestly, the parent experience for me has been full of great joy and quiet weekends, because I just don't screw around with it. And I think they respect it, because they know my philosophy is first building their son. Our whole thing is about building champions. We're going to build them up. We're going to help them become better men. I think we've had great success on the field. So that also echoes, okay, the coaching staff knows what they're doing. And the thing is, my wife sits in the stands every Friday night. She hears it all. She hears it all. Yeah. And she's like, Jimmy, you got to understand what they're saying. I'm like, honey, I love their kids and I love them as families, but I do not give a rip what they're talking about. Like, that's fine. They just don't know. They don't know. So I think to give you an even better answer, at least, I think the parent evolution has changed, especially in youth football. You see it all the time. I think there's a lot of train wrecks happening, because parents, again, their mindset, their competitive nature, they want their kid to succeed. And I think because coaches entertain the conversations, that's where the fuel to the fire starts. So for me, December to June or July, I'll talk to you about and your kid, and all day long we'll go out and have dinner, we'll have coffee, we'll figure it out. But during the season, it's not the time to have those conversations.
That's phenomenal. It's amazing. I'm impressed that you've been able to keep that along those lines all these years. Because Derek, maybe you could speak to this a little bit. Do you kind of? It's interesting, because I see coaches take that stance, and then somehow it doesn't happen, because either the administration,
and that's exactly where I was going to go.
The administration takes the. So you may say that if your administration does not have that, adopt that as their philosophy, then it becomes an issue. What I experience from that standpoint, Derek, am I right about that?
Yeah, and I think that's literally where it comes from, right? If you have a policy and you follow it, that's great. But if you're it comes from the top, right? And if your administration is now, they're going to go back and say, hey, well, you kind of have to do this or you have to do that. That just breaks the entire mold, because now before you know it, now you have parents, and especially today with the social media age and whatnot and the availability, you see parents, they jump the gun. They go right to the superintendent or right to the, they just go above your head as a coach. And if those people don't support you in that facet, then that goes right out the window. I also think, Coach, for you kind of have a leg up because this is how you've been doing it, and you've been doing it for a really long time. That, some of these new guys get into it and they're so afraid of who's saying what about who or who's doing what, that they may come in hard fast with a policy and kind of run with that. But once they actually have to execute it, and now they're kind of on the front lines of, okay, I have to stand my ground, I think they either cave or they get kind of undermined, right? I mean, assistant coaches can do the same thing with, just saying the wrong thing or entertaining the wrong thing. So you really have to be aligned as a program, as an organization, as the whole gamut has to be, this is our mindset, this is how we're going to do it, and then ultimately execute it.
Yeah. Well, you're right on. Both of you guys are right on. So let me kind of give you the secret sauce at Kings. Number one is the philosophy. Our number one job is to build champions. So I sell that to the kids, to the administration. It has nothing to do with winning. And so I think a lot of times, 99% of the time, winning is so much on the table that if a coach goes 0-10, he's out. Or if, there's culture things happening, he's gone. And so early on, I sold, it's not about the win. Winning is the byproduct. We're going to build your kids up. They're boys. We're going to help them become men, good citizens, good students. And so to sell that piece first early, that's what the administration wants. They want good students. They want kids that are screwing around the weekend, all that kind of stuff. So if you can build that early and the parents buy into it early, and then you do have some wins along the way, you're right. I think in the early days, I struggled a little bit because, right, 1-9 to 9-1, like you're losing, and people are measuring you against the win. And now they're not measuring me against the win. I could go 0-10 this year, and I would have zero concerns that they're going to fire me because I lost 10 games. Now, if I do that 5 years in a row, okay, we're probably going to have.
Now we're talking a little something different.
Yeah. So it's just building that philosophy. Everyone's in, and the other piece is I've had great athletic directors and principals who wholeheartedly have supported it, and I've never had a phone call going, Jim, you got to win more games. It's just not the culture.
Well, you're definitely the rarity on that end because we see a lot more bad administrators than we do the others. Yeah,
sad but true.
Yeah, no, that is. I mean, that sounds like a place that I'd want to coach.
That's why I haven't left in 30. That's why I haven't left in 30 years.
I mean, listen, there's a reason you're here for that long.
Move out to the West Coast.
100%.
Sounds like a great place. I could just coach and not have to worry about anybody pulling me aside or administrator pulling me in saying this parent called me up about this or this parent called me up about that sounds fantastic. Where is the school? The school that you coach at? Where is it located?
Yep. So we're in North Seattle. So if you fly into Seattle SeaTac, go down to the Space Needle downtown Seattle. We're without traffic. We're about 25 minutes north, just north of Lake Washington. There's a little lake here in town. We're right here in the north end. So beautiful spot. I can send you pictures. We can see the mountains. We can see the Puget Sound. We're actually a little beach community here, right on the Sound, which is a connection to the
That's phenomenal.
Ocean. It's going to be 70 degrees today. It's gorgeous. I should send you a picture because it's the right spot. Now it's cloudy and rainy from about November till about May, so don't buy into moving here for those months. But it's pretty awesome.
No, we're not doing that. That's for sure. I don't know if we can.
It's a beautiful spot, North Seattle, which helps us with recruiting. By the way, we're a smaller school. But all the coaches that come through from various divisions, Division I on down, they're in the Seattle corridor. So we're really blessed to have coaches from all levels. Right now, the starting punter at the University of Washington is our guy. Offensive lineman at Cal is a kid of ours. We've had kids go to Eastern Washington, UCLA, you name it. So most of the West Coast schools, but very, very blessed to be in that recruiting corridor as well. Because a school our size, east of the mountains or north of the mountains, those coaches wouldn't go check on those doors because they're just too far away.
Got it.
Oh, interesting. Very, very interesting. You've been talked adamantly about like NIL and transfer portal and college football. And I like I said, I love your Twitter feed because I like your memes that you send out. Stuff. That's great.
That's the way to respond to your critics.
That's right. There's a reason you got some clout on the East Coast. You know what I'm saying? We're trying to spread that word. That's for sure.
What are some of the things that you see in that space that are good and that are bad? I guess in everything in between. And then before you answer that, is Washington, are you guys allowed to have NIL in high school?
No, not allowed yet. I'm sure it's coming down.
Yeah.
Well, it's here in Jersey. So
it's the real deal. Yeah, I mean, I have to balance my older, mature perspective of 30 years having seen this versus the reality of today. I think the thing that probably gets me the most is, what do we teach and preach to our kids? Commitment, team first, sticking with it through hard times. I mean, all the basic ingredients that we teach our kids Monday through Thursday, so we compete on Friday. And I think that what bothers me is the NIL and the transfer portal specifically is totally counter to that. And to see a kid who's played at 3 or 4 different colleges just to get the next spot. I mean, the quarterback from Vanderbilt is a great story, right? Just beat Bama, and his story is insane. And God bless him. Like, great job, JUCO to, I think, New Mexico State, to getting his last season at Vanderbilt, and to have that amazing experience. I wouldn't want to take that away from him, but I think it's the commitment piece. It really bothers me, because I think, again, I transfer that into what we're doing. We're building men, we're building champions. And I know this is where I get knocked on social. Like, this isn't marriage, but it's marriage, it's work, it's commitment, it's sticking through things. And I'm really just concerned that we're teaching our kids just to quit when you can, transfer when you can, go to greener pastures. And that's just not life. Life is hard, and you got to stick it out. So that's the transfer portal side for me. And yet there are benefits. Like I talked to the Vanderbilt kid, there are benefits for kids who just aren't making it in one roster or one system. I mean, I transferred. I went from Azusa Pacific to Pacific Lutheran because of my experience. Nothing against Azusa. I loved the school, but my experience with that staff was not a fit for me. And then I transferred to PLU, and it was a great fit. We won a national championship. Things were awesome. I had life-changing experience. So for me, I even transferred. So I can't knock the transfer piece, but it's that commitment piece that really gets me. The NIL, man. Again, I just feel like money ruins most things. If that's the pursuit of what we're doing, I have no problem with someone getting compensated for a good job. Someone getting paid for a fair wage for fair work. But for us to be chasing the dollar as the primary reason of going to an institution, I think just taints the game, and also taints the experience. So and again, there's plus sides. Kids can pay for college, they can pay for things, but when kids are getting millions of dollars to a 19-year-old, that is just a bad equation. So. Good and bad to both, two sides of the same coin. I just think there's more problems than benefit, both with NIL and transfer.
There are a lot of things that I think you're 100% right on. One of the things I thought to myself with the whole, well, first of all, they want to have transfer. I don't think you just everybody transferring all the time. Like, one free transfer kind of deal,
We've kind of spoke about that.
And then there's
change.
Yeah.
Then you have to say.
Yep.
Right. Then you want to transfer again. No one's telling you can't transfer again, but you should have to sit. Right. Unless and maybe back to the way it used to be, where if you want to stay at the same level and transfer, you have to sit out a year after your one free transfer. Right.
Yeah.
Unless you go down a level, which I think was the way it used to be, which was kind of a good, I always thought was a good rule, in the sense that, okay, if you're willing to go down a level, it benefits those programs. And that makes sense. Either you it didn't work out from a program standpoint, or you realize, hey, maybe it's a better level for me, or whatever. That's one thing I think. And then the second thing I think is I think, and this is more basketball than football, but I see this in basketball and baseball. And I think that this is something that now baseball has its own set of issues with NIL. They have a lot of issues too, because of transfer and NIL. But the thing with basketball that it used to have was you could have came out and gone pro at a high school,
right?
And it came with the one and done, and college football's version of that is like I think you could be your third year in, and baseball's version of that I think is third year in. But one of the things that was nice about being able to come out of high school if you wanted to go pro, and I used LeBron James and Kobe as my example.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys who really were mature enough and that good didn't have to waste their time and make believe they wanted to be in college when they didn't want to be in college and all that kind of stuff. Yep. Now, are there people that make mistakes, right? If you think you're going to go in the first round, and let's use basketball as an example, and you end up you don't get picked. You should then be able to go to college. Okay, right? You should, because you didn't get picked, right? Okay, I thought I was going to be a high pick. Turns out I assessed myself incorrectly, and now let me go to college and play. But the guys who are Kobe or LeBron or that high level, even to me, even in football. Okay, if there's a guy, maybe Ryan Williams is maybe my example from Alabama as a football player that maybe potentially. There's not many of those. Derrick Henry maybe potentially could have at high school. Not many, but those guys don't have to pretend and waste their time making believe they want to be in a college program when they can go, if they're going to get drafted in the first round, and they can go and play pro sports, right? And now that we have NIL and transfer, let's stop making believe that they're not pro athletes. If we're going to do this, let's not make me. If we're saying that, so let those kids that want to go right to the pros, if they go through the draft process, they get drafted high enough and they want to go to the pros, go. If they don't get drafted high enough, okay, let them go to college and play, okay? And then they can go and play, and they now know kind of what their value is for the pros. And like I said, it's more basketball than football because you do have kids in basketball that can come. They're already 6'10" or whatever, and have a certain level of ability. But if we're doing all these things, let's, like you said, if making money is good, but let's not make believe. Let's not make believe that we're trying to make people have a college experience, because that's not the case anymore. Okay. So, there are kids that'll go through and not get paid anything. They may play Division I and they're going to have a regular college experience. Let's put in a transfer rule situation. You want to have one free transfer, great. After that, you're going to have some penalty unless you drop a level, because I think going from Alabama to Wisconsin to UConn, where I play, like in 3 consecutive years, is just complete craziness. And it's hard for the coaches. It's just as hard as the players. Players can say whatever they want. It's just as hard as them. You got to make new friends. You got to fit in with a team. If you're not that guy who comes in and captivates a room, it's going to be hard. I don't care how good you are. You could be. There's a lot of great athletes that are introverted.
Yeah, they're immature.
Yeah, they could be the best player at a team, but they might be introverted. So now they're putting themselves, and maybe the parents are, but it could be them. They keep putting themselves in these difficult situations over and over again. And I do agree. You're teaching them to bail out. Okay, you're teaching them to bail out, and that's where some of these simple things can start to alleviate that process. It's not going to make it perfect.
Nope.
It's not.
Never.
Nope. But you have to start to alleviate those processes, because if you're going to put money in these kids' hands, they need to know that. If a kid could legitimately go to the pros, like, out of high school, why should they be stopped from going to the pros? I think it's nuts.
I think you're just talking about guardrails. I think this thing has spiked so quickly, so kind of out of control. And I anticipate there are going to be better guardrails in the next couple of years. There has to be, or it's going to break. It's going to break the system. I think the transfer portal is going to break the system. I feel bad for kids that are seniors in high school trying to get anywhere. If you're a 1-star, 2-star, or a no-star, because there's so many kids in the portal. It's just things are what they are. We saw this massive shift in money and in transferring, and I think, as you just outlined, there needs to be some guardrails, some rules set in place, and I would anticipate in the next 3 to 4 years we'll see that, and I hope so, because there is a benefit. There is a gain. If the kid's good enough, pay him, go do his thing, go pro, all the things you outlined. And for the rest of the student athletes, again, it's college. They're trying to go there to be students, at least last time I checked. Let's make it a fair or better playing field for all of them, and help them become, again, better men, better students, better people as they lead the process. So, yeah, we'll see where it goes. It's going to break if it doesn't change.
Absolutely.
Do you think that people
sorry, Dave. Guys, I hate to be this.
Oh yeah, you got to jump.
I've got to exit, but I got to go coach a sub varsity game on the other side of God knows where we're going. Coach Shap, I really appreciate you. I hope to do this again at some time because the information is just phenomenal, and I know you're gonna finish this off with a bag. So, Coach Shue, I'll talk to you later. Coach Shap, really appreciate everything, man. Keep doing what you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Take care.
All right. So what's really interesting is, I think that you get in a situation where in the long run, you may have kids not go and play college sports that really could have played.
Yeah.
I'm curious your thoughts on that, because I just see you're coaching a high school right now. So you're seeing players that you have that you might be like, this kid normally would be this level, but now he's not even getting recruited. And I just think the overall psychology of it on a kid, like when I talk to some parents and some kids, it's like, and these are not the problem parents I'm talking to. These are the parents, really nice parents, really good parents, really good kids, want to play college football. And I could see the discouragement in the process. Now, listen, sometimes, you just have to deal with the fact that maybe you're not at the level you're at. But I think in some of these cases, these are guys that legitimately would be in this level, and this has pushed them out of that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I have two thoughts. One is kind of West Coast, at least Pacific Northwest related. We do not have a lot of D2. We have a handful of D3. We have very few NAIA schools. So the pool and the options as you kind of go more to Midwest and East Coast. It's like, I think Ohio has like 10 Division II football schools. We have one. So it's like, so just the pool, at least here in the Pacific Northwest, I'm talking Montana, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, they're very limited places for these kids to go, number one. So they have to go out of state, which means if they don't get recruited by an in-state school, they got to go far away, which is always a challenge. But to what you just said, there's a lot of good kids, student athletes that are athletically able from good families, some of them that can afford a D2 school or maybe even a private D3 school. Like they could go play, and they're just not putting their hat in the ring because they're like, it's just impossible to get exposure, impossible to get recruited. So I think it has put that kind of that mid-tier athlete and maybe sub-tier athlete who could go play college ball somewhere just out of the game. They're just getting knocked out. And back to the portal, there's so many more, a couple tens of thousands of athletes that have already proven themselves. I talked to a coach at Weber State down here in Utah, and they're a good program here on the West Coast historically. And he's like, we have pretty much decided we're going to be the 4-year junior college. We're gonna get kids in here, great athletes, freshman, sophomore, get them playing. We're going to win football games with freshman, sophomore kids. And we know they're going to transfer. We know they're going to leave if they're that good. So it's a whole trickle down that I think this knocks that high school kid who's mid-tier, maybe better, out of the process, not getting exposure, not having coaches coming by. And there's so many kids in the portal that it just kind of knocks them out. So they say, forget it. I'll go be a student. I'll go get my degree and do something else.
Yeah, and Weber State is known as a powerhouse in football for many, many, many years. When I was coming through, that was actually one of the FCS mega powers.
Yep.
And they play in that great conference. So that to me is shocking to hear coaches talk like that, which I believe he's 100%. That's exactly the case. JUCO, which used to really have a huge benefit to kids who needed it. Right. That's like basically now become a waste of time. The only thing these kids can really do is prep at a school for a year, right? Yep. And that's a lot of money out of a parent's pocket, right? So JUCO used to be, I'm not good enough academically, but I'm a really good player, or I wasn't recruited heavily, or I don't have enough money to go to a prep school for a year. This is a place for me to go and develop. Now prep school is expensive, to do another year, to reclass, that's expensive on parents. And so I think that's one of the many, many trickle down effect things that are happening. But I think that the framework, so you're right, like exposure. So I don't run anywhere near as many events I used to. I used to run these camps that were showcases. It was great. Kids used to get recruited. We originally did freshman, sophomore. We were like one of the first to do it. We got guys early recruited. It was a big deal. Over the years, I've evolved the process in many different ways. But basically now, if a kid goes to a showcase, like you can no longer tell them that when I send coaches information that you're going to start to get recruited. No. It's and I'm just talking about the best player. I'm not talking about the kid who it goes there isn't really that good, right? I'm talking about the kids who are better, who you would say, hey, this kid should get recruited and stuff. I can't tell them that anymore. It's one of the things that affects all that ecosystem. I think it even affects the college coaches with their camp system, right? They keep telling kids to come to camp, you get recruited. You don't recruit them. No. They're just going to stop coming to your camps eventually. Parents got to communicate to other parents that, hey, I went here. It only works for a few years. It works for one recruiting cycle. And after that, everybody's told everybody that's no longer working. And I used my camp as an example, which is not a college camp, as to how it started to happen. Like I would have a hard time. Like I would only be able to tell the very, very, very best kids that there's an opportunity, not the kid who's very good, who may be an FCS Division II kid, because I really wouldn't know if they would get.
Well, you're really shining the light on, I get asked all the time about recruiting. And again, I think it really falls on the head coach. It falls on his shoulders at this point to break through the noise. Like you said, the showcases are what they are. Going to a college camp is what it is. But if a coach has enough of a voice, has been around long enough, a high school coach, and he's done a good job with previous recruits that have made it to various levels, that I think most high school coaches don't realize the importance of that. I love marketing. I love connecting. I love meeting people. So I'm in a space where I kind of do that every day for my day job. So I love doing that. But most coaches don't understand the importance of that as a high school coach. Even for a kid going D3, it's like it is your job. It is really on your shoulders to help that student athlete break through the noise. Because if not, they're going to go to all these things and they'll get overlooked. And like you said, even if they go to these things and they're known, the system's so broken that these college coaches in many cases just can't or won't, because they're looking at the portal. They're looking at that sophomore or junior that can transfer in from a college, not a senior transferring in from, even a decent high school. So I think it'll change. It'll evolve. It has to, but it's right now, it really is hurting the current junior and senior trying to get into college.
And I look at opportunities from a college standpoint, ultimately, that one of the great things of college sports before the last 5 years, but the 20 years before that, maybe even the 30 years before that, was that sports gave kids an opportunity, right, to go to college. Okay. And what has happened with this whole process is, I think that that part of that candy that was out there brought kids to playing sports. And you have a nation now of kids that play sports, like whether their parents were good athletes or not. They're all, and I'm talking youth sports all the way up. They're playing sports, which usually means you're going to be active, okay, which you want nowadays, because it's not like in the old days where you can go and ride your bike down the block, and we're much more overpopulated in a lot of areas, and you can't just ride down the block, go to a place and play, right? It's not, you can, but it's rare that it happens in the same way. And parents are worried about different things with respect to things, and I understand it all. So. But sports gives an opportunity. That's the outlet to go run around, to go. That's kind of the new, besides phys ed, which is kind of dying in most places. Right. This is kind of like phys ed too, to an extent, right? They're running around. They're active. Yes, it's competitive. Whatever people's stance are on it, one way or the other, they're moving. Your kids are moving, right? That's a really good thing. Yeah. What happens? That boom happened because there was opportunity. Division I, Division II, Division III, NAIA. If that opportunity shifts, and this goes for all sorts, because I've heard it in baseball a lot, where they have a lot of different issues with respect to baseball. If that shifts, and we're not using phys ed as an area to really help kids to get healthy, what are we doing here? Because what ends up happening is now those kids, and I'm talking, it's not my kid's generation who's 9, but the next generation, 10, 15 years from now, those kids and those parents may start to communicate and say, I don't know that you need to waste your time at sports. Go be a computer programmer. You're not.
Well, you just nail it. Like that's I think that's what's gonna hurt the game. I think we're worried about injuries. We're working about all these things. I think that's what's gonna hurt the game 10, 15 years. It's the investment in the population. At least I know here in the Northwest. I mean, youth football used to be the thing 15, 20 years ago. You had 5- and 6-year-olds playing youth football here in the Pacific Northwest, and their teams were loaded with these little peewees. And you don't, flag football's come along. I think the NFL has done a good job keeping the game intact via flag football. Yep. But that evolution, because of safety and concerns, and now the evolution of mom and dad, with a newborn now, and maybe 10 years from now when they're 10 or 11, going, no, you don't need to screw around with it anymore. It's just not really, there's no end outcome that's really a benefit. So we're losing them in phys ed. We're potentially losing them to the games, any game, soccer, football, baseball.
Right.
And it could have a really negative impact on the environment. So, and the kids in that regard. Coach Shu, I have a hard stop here in a few minutes. I got to head to another meeting as well. Yeah, but just any final thoughts?
No, how about your final thoughts? I'll let you have some final thoughts, and then we'll go.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, first, thank you for the invite. Love to do this again as our schedules would allow. I think if I'm going to kind of give a soapbox speech, I think the idea that football matters to these young men. I'm talking junior high to high school age, 12 to 18. I think building champions first, speaking into their lives, being that transformational coach, not that transactional coach. I know we all have pressure for the wins, but to really focus on building up the young men, helping them become better men is really our number one job. And we get to use an amazing game, a vehicle called football that we're all passionate about, we all love. So just really lean into the hearts of your players. I've been there before, like I said, 0-10, 10-0. The wins will come. It'll be a byproduct of the work that you're doing. And you'll feel better at night when you lay your head on your pillow if you are more of that transformational coach, speaking into their lives on and off the field. With that, let's protect the game. I think I've had multiple experiences already this season where coaches on the other side weren't really coaching or playing their players the way that I would hope the game would be played. It's a tough game. It's a bloody game. It's a hit or get hit game. But do it with sportsmanship, do it with class, and really help the game survive and survive as we kind of take it into this next couple decades of football, hopefully. So anyways, I appreciate the platform. You guys are doing an amazing job. And it just was a great honor to be with you and Derek today for a few minutes. It was a great way to spend my morning.
Thanks, Coach. You guys have a great day. It's great having you on. We'll see you soon.
All right, buddy. Take care.
All right, it was great. We had Coach Shapiro on. Great bringing on guys from the West Coast. We're having them all over the country. We look forward to, and make sure you visit us at Coach Schuman on YouTube. It's important to make sure you get out there and do right by the kids and keep improving, improving the sport. And we'll see you all soon.